Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show.
Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. I'm delighted today to have with me Chris Edson. Chris is the CEO of RPath over in West London, opposite White City, very close to TV studios. Chris, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me.
Chris, you're in a fabulous part of London. Could you just start with sharing with our listeners a little bit about RPath, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So what we do at RPath is we try and get people we help them reverse and prevent their type 2 diabetes. So a lot of people, when they get diagnosed with this horrible disease, they don't really know what to do, who to turn to, what changes they have to make. Mm-hmm. We help people do that. So we give people a digital program, they get coaches, they get technology to start tracking their health, they get a full education program, and they take it all through an app. By the end of the program, which is 3 months, then they'll have made some really big changes to both their nutrition, their exercise, and also some other things like their sleep and their stress management. And the whole aim is to get people out of the risk zone, or in some cases even reverse their diabetes.
And is that on desktop? Is it on Android, iOS?
Everything. So you can either use our web app, so you just log in through our website, or it's on iPhone and Android. You can access the program however you want, because there's a large age range of people that take the program. Type 2 diabetes tends to be an older population that develop it, so it's quite important that they can get the program on whatever device they want. And
tell us a little about how did the company get formed? What's the story behind how you've come to where you are today in the journey of the company?
So the company formed because me and the other co-founder, we were working in the NHS, and it became very obvious that type 2 diabetes was this ridiculously preventable problem. Mm-hmm. And it was crippling the entire NHS. The NHS is an organisation that's just really important to both of us, that we keep it afloat, and it seemed like, well, we both have a technical background. We thought, well, if we can build some kind of digital product that really helps people with this, then we could save the NHS. It was as simple as that. Mm-hmm. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we quit our day jobs with that in mind. Of let's just have a crack at this. We didn't know how we were going to solve the problem. We didn't know what we were going to do. We just knew that we wanted to solve it, and we thought we could. So after lots of iteration, 2 years of iteration, we ended up on this lifestyle change program, and that has turned out to be the thing that has really helped people. And now we're commissioned all throughout the NHS nationally. We've been growing a lot. The program works really well. We've got lots of clinical trial data published now, so things are good.
Fantastic. And now you've got about 22 people in London, in West London, as I said, near to Shepherd's Bush, White City, and you're growing again as well with more people. Tell us, can you just share with our listeners then what does the typical a day look like for you now as the leader of the company?
Yeah, so this is the bit that I find this the boring bit. But it's changed a lot. So you go through, as the company grows, you go through these different stages as a founder. Because initially, at the beginning, you're doing everything yourself. Literally everything, from building the desks to writing the code. I'm a programmer myself, to doing the marketing, to doing the hiring, like just everything. And then you get a small bit of traction. And that traction allows you to raise a bit of money, and then you hire a team around you, and that's good. But you're still, even up to a team of about 10, you're still having to do a lot of things yourself. And then it changes again. You raise a bit more money, which is what we recently just closed a big funding round. The team hits about 20 people, and you learn that your job is no longer doing things. And that's very weird, especially if you're a builder like me. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to make things. Mm-hmm. If that is your personality, don't go and be a CEO. Don't go and try and run a company, because that has been what my job has transitioned into. So the day-to-day now, a lot of it is just managing the team. I have 9 or 10 direct reports into me now, and the management of them alone is a full-time job. Well, that could be 2 people's full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my day-to-day is having one-to-ones with them. It's doing really boring things like speaking with investors, speaking to new NHS organisations that we might be developing partnerships with, or other organisations that we can partner with, like insurance companies, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you turn into this, you turn into a manager, basically, which is amazing because you then get to mentor a bunch of people and help them grow and help them accomplish their goals, but your role does take a very big swing.
If you think about, you've obviously been on this journey for 4 years, but perhaps before that, or even during that period, has anyone had an impact on you as a leader, and perhaps even that someone's been a mentor to you that you can share a little bit of a story with us?
Yeah, so someone that I don't know, but who I think has mentored me from afar is Ben Horowitz. So Ben Horowitz, he wrote a book. It's quite famous, called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. He's a partner of a venture capital firm called Andreessen Horowitz. And he basically, in this book, he just outlines his whole story of how he grew his company. Mm-hmm. And it's probably had the single largest effect on me as a company founder and as a CEO, because the brutal honesty that he goes about it is so refreshing. In an age where every startup is crushing it and your LinkedIn feed is full of success and all the rest of it, Ben Horowitz comes out and says, we made some horrible mistakes. This almost killed me. I was suicidal. Food lost its flavor. I couldn't sleep for years. When he comes out and says that, and this is one of the most successful venture capitalists of the last 20 years, it gives you a level of support that, maybe this is stressful and maybe this is okay. Mm-hmm. The other person that probably less traditional for me to mention that I think has had a big effect on me is actually my fiance. So my fiance works at Google in their internal strategy team, and she's basically taught me that the most important characteristic in leadership is authenticity, which is the idea of, again, just trying to be honest with people. Mm-hmm. You have this leaning as a founder to try to protect your team from things. Mm-hmm. You feel like it's your job to protect people from all the terrible things that are happening, from the fact that you're about to run out of money, or the fact that you're not getting clients or sales or anything like that. And that's actually the wrong inclination to make, because if you shield your team from that, then they have no way of helping, and they don't really understand the severity of the situation.
Absolutely.
So I think she has helped me a lot to try and just be a lot more honest with how I lead the team and the conversations that I have. And I have seen a noticeable difference in how the team kind of responds to you. Because the weird thing that happens when again, the other shift that you see as the team grows is people start reacting to you differently in the team. And the way that I heard it said once was, people stop peeing next to you in the urinal, right? Which is, there's a kind of deference that happens because you're the CEO, and people mind what they say around you. And they also, everything that you say, they take really, really seriously, which is actually quite a lonely position to be in, because being at the top, feeling like you're on top of people, it's just not nice. So breaking down some of those barriers, like showing that you're really vulnerable, showing that you have problems in the business that you want to help solve with them, it just changes things entirely. And once I did that, there was like a humanizing effect that I think is really helpful.
Tell me, Chris, a little bit about employee engagement. So I'm curious to hear how you're keeping your employees engaged in the company, particularly as you're going through this growth phase.
Sure. So the difficulty with this is you never want your team to sound like a commodity. So I try not to think about it as keeping our employees engaged. I try and think about it as how do we make the company a good place to work? And I think it's a really interesting thing, because although we want to make a really successful company, as in we want to make revenue, right? And that's the ultimate aim of a limited company, is you want to be a business that is profitable. That is obviously a large goal, and we wouldn't have raised money if that wasn't a goal. But at the same time, there's another interesting thing I learned, which is that running a good place to work is an end in and of itself. Mm-hmm. Creating a place to work that people feel empowered, that they're working towards goals, that they're working on a big problem, all of those things, that's what we realized that we wanted to build in the company. So that's what we try and build. That's how we think about keeping employees engaged. It's about creating a good place to work. So what that really means is, really tangibly, it's three things. What people want, I'm generalizing, when they come into work, is they want to be working on something that they care about. They want to be working on something that gives them energy. So, they're not drained by doing it. It gives them a positive feeling when they do it. And thirdly, they want to be working towards something that is a goal in their life. And that goal could be financial. It could be, well, I want to make money and get an amount of savings to buy a house. Or it could be professional. It could be, well, yeah, I want to lead a sales force that's selling projects all throughout the NHS. And if we can try and do those things, then we've kind of succeeded. So the way that you get there is through trying to be really, really on top of what every single team member is thinking and feeling. So again, the practical step from that is we have really, really regular one-to-ones with all of the team. And those one-to-ones, they're not designed to be admonishments or a place for me to say what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. It's a place for the team member to say, these are the things that are upsetting me. These are the things that I would like to be fixed. And creating an environment that is outside of the day-to-day. Because the minutiae of the day means that you often don't have a designated set of time where you can talk about those other things. Like email doesn't really cut it. Slack doesn't really cut it. Even speaking outwardly in an open plan office, it doesn't really cut it. So creating an environment of, we have 20 minutes, half an hour to talk about whatever you want to talk about, we found is so helpful. And so many things come out of that where you're like, well, I just had no idea that you felt that way at all. Another interesting idea that I found is it's can come across egotistical, but the other co-founder of the business and I, we have written guides to how to work with us. So we reasoned that there are all these likes and dislikes that people have about the way that they work. And it could be how you want updates about progress, or it could be how you want your meetings run, or it could be just the things that make you tick, your motivations. And we found, me and the other co-founder, writing these down and putting them in a document for everyone to see, like, this is Chris. Sometimes I'm really short over Slack. Sometimes I walk through the office in a bad mood, and this is why. Being really explicit about those things, we found helps a lot. And now different people on the team are like, oh, this is great, can I make one of these? We found that helps a lot.
It's great to hear, by the way, and obviously it also sets people up to be, this is how it is, this is what it's like. So actually you're being very open about the environment, which is fantastic. What's the biggest challenge you think facing business leaders today, particularly in your space,
So there's a lot of increasing complexity.
In terms of what?
There are so many different ways and technologies that you can deal with problems nowadays. Picking which one to go with, learning what the market is doing, all of that. It's just the expression is drinking from the fire hose. How do you know which information to take in, which action to go on? And it was probably, I wasn't an entrepreneur 10 years ago, but it was probably simpler 10 years ago. The other thing that kind of compounds that is the fact that there is so much, everyone wants to be a startup founder. There's just been this trend, right? Everyone's doing it. It's like the cool thing to do. And there's also a lot of capital. There's a lot of money floating around to fund startups. So that means there's a lot of well-funded startups doing a lot of these things. So this healthcare space where we're in, it becomes quite noisy, and it becomes quite difficult to see which thing is going to rise to the top.
Of course.
So noise. That's what I'd say. Noise about things.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received? You referred back to the book earlier, but I'm just curious what you believe.
The best bit of advice I ever received was to just make sure that you are keeping your best self. So by that I mean running a company or being a leader in whatever way can be really stressful. You're given a lot of responsibility, and all of that responsibility is on you. The responsibility of the company, how it goes, is all basically down to me and the co-founder, but ultimately I'm the CEO, so it comes down to me. Learning how to deal with that stress, making sure that you are your best self on any given day is probably the most important thing you can do. Because the tendency is to want to work all hours of the day to try and make the thing better. And that's probably the wrong inclination, because it ends up leading to burnout. Mm-hmm. So making sure that doing a proper audit of what are the things that I need to do to make me be my best self. Mm-hmm. Is it I need exercise? Is it I need time with my family? Is it I need time with my friends? Is it I need to read a book? Is it I need time to play video games? Whatever it is, you need to make sure in a given week that you are doing those things, because if you're not, again, it's this move from like you're doing things, you're hand cranking things, you're making things happen, to wait, stop, I now need to be a leader and a thinker, and if stress impacts me, it will impact the entire future of the company and my team. So yeah, taking your health seriously, which I guess is ironic, being a healthcare startup founder.
How do you help a new employee understand the culture of the company then?
So one of the first things we do is we make every new team member actually go on our 3-month program. So even though the program, we designed it for people living with type 2 diabetes, and the program's actually helpful for anyone looking to make a lifestyle change, if you want to change your eating habits or change your relationship with food. Mm-hmm. So we have everyone go on the program, even if they're perfectly healthy, and it helps them understand that the whole culture of the program is and company is built on making sustainable changes that you can do for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. No quick fixes, no fad diets. So going on the program basically sets that right to their core. That's one thing we do. And we very recently were very explicit about the traits that we expect people to show when they're working in the company. Mm-hmm. So we went and wrote down 8 different traits. And the reason they're not values is because I think values, when a company has values, they're just very intangible. How do you action a value? Like honesty. How do you action honesty? So we did something different. We laid out 8 traits, and those traits are things like impactful, they're things like thought leader, they're things like resilient. They're things that you can actually be and do, with examples that you can put to each one. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing we do is we refer to them a lot. They say that one of the best things you can do as a CEO is repeat yourself often. So making sure at every one-to-one you're like addressing those things and saying, yeah, it sounds quite trite and like you're trying to force a square peg into a round hole, but saying if someone's stressed out by something, talk to them about resilience and mm-hmm. how that's really important for working in a startup, and how there are going to be countless ups and downs, mm-hmm. but that's why we're in this business. So referencing those traits at every point in the personal development to one-to-ones. Even in hiring, when we interview someone, we go through those traits and try and work out how they align to them. Like one of them is mission-driven, which sounds silly. Again, every startup would say that they're mission-driven, but for us, we're actually trying to cure type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm. So that come back to purpose, does it?
Yeah. If they're in this to make money, this is the wrong business for them to be in. Mm-hmm. So we know from within, well, I shouldn't give the game away for anyone that might be listening to this and interviewing, but you can see quite early on whether or not that is important to someone or whether or not they're faking it.
Understood. What's the one mistake you witness leaders making more frequently than others?
So if you try to, this is an example because I'm guilty of this, trying to kind of hold on and control things mm-hmm. As the business starts to scale. Again, I can only really talk about my locus, but you do get to the stage where you have built a team and the team should be doing those things, and you should be making sure that people are doing the right things in the right way. If you try to hold on to everything, then again, it will lead to burnout. So like learning to let go and hiring the right people so that you can let go is really important.
How do you think you see your industry now changing in the future? particularly in this market, over the next few years, and how do you think that will also affect your ability to attract and retain the right talent for you?
So there's a bit of a move in healthcare to be moving away from products and drugs to be moving to services. And all of that is because healthcare is moving a bit more towards prevention and the fact that, well, let's try and stop people getting sick to begin with. With that, there's also this move into digital. So we're moving away from doctors and pharma towards product designers, developers, and building digital products towards prevention. So what that does mean is that we're a digital tech company, and the market for a developer or someone technical has gotten really, really fierce in London. So yeah, that's one of the big problems. There's just a big difficulty in hiring technology and digital talent at the moment in London.
If you had your time again and were given your 20-year-old self advice, what's the one thing that you would say?
I would tell my 20-year-old self to stop wasting your time doing all this other stuff and to go build a company. So I'm 30 now. So my 20-year-old self, it wasn't that long ago, but I messed around a lot doing things that I thought were important because other people had told me that they were important. And I kind of learned that there aren't really any rules. You don't need to go and do those things. So for example, my parents told me that I naturally am a technical person, and I've been building computers since I was a kid. I wanted to go to study computer science. My parents told me not to because everyone was going to study computer science, and that was the job market was going to be too flooded with people. And this is like 2005. This is going back quite a long time, and obviously they were proven quite heavily wrong. Also, everyone at my university, all of them were going into London city jobs, into consulting, accounting, banking, and all of that. And so I went and became a consultant, and I did that for like 2 or 3 years. And I don't really know why. It's because my friends were doing it. It seemed like the right thing to do, and it seemed like, I needed industry experience. I needed experience of the working world. Whereas really, if I just gone and built things, which is what really brings me joy, I probably have got here sooner.
Chris, thanks for sharing the story. And it's always good to hear the advice that you'd give yourself again, because I'm sure there's many listeners, especially the younger listeners, who are also going through that challenge of what should they should do next. So thanks for sharing that. If people want to find out more about you and get in touch with you or connect with the company, what's the best way they can do that?
You can just drop me an email at chris@rpath.co.uk. Always very open to answering a question or giving advice about stuff. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thanks for joining me on the show.
Great, thanks so much.